I watched more horror films in 2024 than I ever have in 1 year. And not only did I see some of the scariest films that I've ever seen in my life, but I also watched some of my new favorite films of all time. And while this isn't all of them, I highly recommend all of these films.
Oh my God!
And starting off with one that I think any horror fan will recommend is When Evil Lurks from 2023. And even though this is newer, I feel like everybody has talked about this movie so much, and for good reason, because it is both horrific and incredible all at the same time. It revolves around two brothers that find themselves having to deal with one of the rotten that is on the verge of giving birth to evil itself. And really the only other thing that you need to know going into this movie is that nobody is safe. This movie doesn't pull any punches. It is brutal, and you need to prepare, because this was one of the first films that I had to cover my eyes for. If you know the scene I'm talking about. I just, no thanks. It's intense, but that's just what happens when evil lurks. Nothing good's gonna happen. This movie won a ton of awards, and I believe it's one of those horror films that people will be talking about for many, many years to come, and it is definitely worth your watch. And another one that's definitely worth your watch is Milk and Cereal. I tried to shorten my list up to only 15 things and then was so conflicted that I had to come back to make sure this movie was on the list. So, because of this one movie, I decided that I needed to add in more movies for you to watch.
This is just one piece of the puzzle.
It's from the mind of Curry Barker, who is a part of the channel That's a Bad Idea with Cooper Tomlinson, and this movie is short and wonderful. They've done quite a few other short films on the channel, but this is by far the best thing that they've ever made.
Goodbye. What? Oh, Jesus!
It's about two friends, Milk and Seven. I don't know what else in the world you would be thinking, but they've gotten real popular on all social media platforms because of the pranks that they like to pull.
The element on it, man. Let's see the setup.
But because of a surprise birthday party and some surprise pranks, of course, it begins to escalate as they start to one-up each other over and over again until the pranks sort of go way, way, way too far. And I'll just leave it there because you need to go and watch this. This will be the easiest for you to find because it's right here on YouTube.
What do you mean you don't like it?
It's definitely worth your watch, especially if you like found footage horror. But another movie that you need to go and watch is Parents from 1989. This is a film I'd never even heard about until watching Super Eye Patch Wolf's video on disturbing movies. And this here is just so different than anything else on this list. Because it's set in the 1950s and revolves around a young boy who suspects that what his parents are feeding him is not exactly what they're saying it is.
What are we eating?
And we follow him throughout the movie as he tries his hardest to prove that his parents are not only murderers, but they're also cannibals. And the way that this is shot will also have you feeling weak and helpless and second-guessing everything that is going on as you're trying to figure out whether or not Randy Quaid and Mary Beth Hunt are crazy, or if there's something else going on here. This movie's so insane and just different that you need to go and watch it. And luckily, it's on Tubi, so you should be able to find it really easy.
Eat your meat.
And for all of these films, I'll have down in the description of where you can find to go and watch them, just like Annihilation. Yes, I know I hadn't watched Annihilation until this year, and I wished I would have watched it sooner. Because this one's also so different in the way that they approached aliens that I can't really think of anything to compare it to. And I can also tell from reading the comments that this is a favorite for many of you. It's got a stacked cast with Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson, Benedict Wong, Oscar Isaac, and it's also got a book series if you want to go further into this world. But what I find so interesting that Alex Garland did is he only read the first book and then went and wrote the film after one reading. So the movie is basically its own standalone story, but it's still so good. And this bear scene, One of the coolest things that I've ever seen, and one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen, is 1977's House.
House is a Japanese horror comedy that was released in 1977, and it's PewDiePie's favorite horror film. That's gotta count for something, right? The movie follows 7 girls who are named after their single personality trait. We have Gorgeous, the main character, and she's named Gorgeous because she's pretty and slightly obsessed with the way she looks. We also have Fantasy, who has a crazy imagination. Sweet because she's sweet. Prof because she's super smart, like a professor. I mean, look at those glasses. Melody because she's musically talented. Kung Fu because she knows Kung Fu. And lastly, Mac, and this poor girl's personality trait is that she's fat. That's so depressing. And she's not even remotely fat. The movie follows the girls as they visit Gorgeous's aunt's house on summer vacation. And it doesn't take long for very strange things to start happening to them. One by one, the girls start disappearing in similar ways to their names until all of them are consumed by the house. This movie feels like an absolute dream. It's super stylized with some very weird editing choices, combined with the very vibrant painted backgrounds and the over-the-top acting and scenes like this. Not to mention that it sometimes just becomes a kung fu movie for a couple of seconds. But at some point, the movie turns from a silly, goofy dream to an absolutely surreal nightmare. It has some genuinely scary scenes and one of the craziest death reveals I've ever seen in my life. It's a super fun haunted house movie, but I seriously cannot put into words how absolutely insane this movie is. And the movie's almost scarier because of how absurd it is. You really just have to watch this movie for yourself. If you're interested in getting into the weirder side of horror, this is a great movie to start on. My name is King Noosme, and thank you, Poltergips, for letting me be in your video.
I figured the best place for you to get this recommendation is from the same place that I did, from King Noosme himself. If any of you know of any other weird horror movies for me to watch, please let me know. So thank you, King Noosme, for helping me find my gateway into some weird horror movies. But I think I also found another gateway with one of the most influential horror films of all time, because anytime that I watch anything else, this movie comes to mind, and it is Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978.
Hey, Body Snatchers reference.
And it's another film with an amazing cast. You've got Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, Leonard Nimoy. This was the first movie I watched in 2024. This is how I started off my year, by watching what is now my number 6 favorite horror film of all time.
Why?
And this film also has one of my favorite facts that I've ever heard about a movie. Because this movie is a remake of the 1956 version with Kevin McCarthy, and while he was rehearsing for his scene,
You're an expert in danger.
There was just a naked homeless guy close by that walked over, asked him what movie they were making. He said it was a remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the guy looked at him and said, "The original was better," and walked away. Movie's not even close to being done, and there's already critics. And a movie that'll make you feel like everyone around you is critiquing you is They Look Like People. Clearly, this is a movie that was heavily influenced by Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but this one's got a different spin on it.
They are everywhere. Their plan is almost complete.
If you're like me and your favorite creepypasta of all time is Psychosis, you're probably gonna like this movie. And what might make you like this movie even more is to find out that it was written, directed, produced, and edited all by Perry Blackshear. It was very clearly a passion project from one guy who had an idea and then made it a reality, which is super inspiring to me. But this movie is another one to drive you insane. You'll find that there's quite a few of those on this list. It revolves around two friends, Wyatt and Christian, and Wyatt is convinced that a war is coming and that he can't trust anyone because they look like people. And the only other thing that I'll say is that you need a friend like Christian If you watch the movie, you'll understand by the end of it that that is the kind of friend that you need when you are losing your mind.
I don't believe what you believe, but I know you believe it. So just be honest with me.
So you need to just go watch it because this is an experience all in itself. And speaking of experiences, one of the coolest that I had this year was getting to see a movie before it ever released. And of course, that was The Forest Hills, which is Shelley Duvall's last film, but Chico Mendes in this movie did so good. This movie had me going back and forth so much on what in the world is going on and who I should trust and who I should root for that I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Oh, grief. I don't know.
And it's also the reason that I went ahead and jumped on board to support Scott Goldberg in his next film. The film revolves around a man named Rico who is not only convinced himself, but trying his hardest to convince everybody around him that there are werewolves out here in the forest.
Every single time I tell the locals, they all just laugh at me like I'm some sort of a clown.
And while it is a werewolf movie, it's definitely a psychological horror film, which is always going to be my favorite.
Take the medication. Okay, fine, I'll take it.
And I feel like the same can be said for The Witch, because there is a lot of psychological horror that is going on here, but what I didn't realize until this year is how much I love folk horror.
I be the witch of the wood. Liar, liar. I am.
Yes, and I know what you're thinking. You haven't seen The Witch until this year? I don't know, I couldn't find it anywhere, and I finally did and watched it, and I get it. It's amazing. Being centered around a Puritan family in 1630s New England, where they have to not only deal with being the new outcast of the community, but also witchcraft and possession.
What dost thou want?
Robert Eggers knocked it out of the park. Of course, he also did great on The Lighthouse, and I'm assuming that the new Nosferatu is fantastic as well. Even though I haven't seen it yet, I am planning on going to see that one in the theaters.
What then?
But it all started with The Witch, and you need to go and watch it, and then you need to go watch Bug. Because if you watch The Witch and you're asking yourself, what's really going on here? Watching Bug is going to drive you insane. It's from 2006 and stars Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon of all people. But the weirdest part to me is that this is from William Friedkin, the guy that made The Exorcist. And all I'll really tell you about the movie is it's about two people that are in a motel room in the middle of nowhere, and they find a bug in the bed. And then they start to find them literally everywhere, and it is up to you to figure out if there are bugs, if there's not bugs, if this is a government experiment, what in the world is going on here, because it will drive you to the point that you feel like there are bugs all over you. I'm sorry, that's just what's gonna happen. After that, you're going to want a movie to make you forget all about the bugs, and so you're going to want to watch Troll 2. And that's not a joke. This movie's just special. It's one of the lowest rated horror movies that you'll probably ever see, and it's fantastic. And to tell you how fantastic it is, there's not even a troll in this movie. They're all goblins.
Daddy, they're goblins! Monstrous beings!
And I would assume most people haven't watched this movie, but you've definitely seen this scene.
Oh my God!
It's from 1990 and follows a family that's going on a vacation to a town called Nilbog, where they discover that everybody in the town is actually a goblin and is looking to plant humans so that way they can then eat them. Just let that sink in.
They're eating her! And then they're going to eat me!
This is the kind of movie that I needed to watch after watching the most horrific movie that I've ever seen in my life. The Coffee Table. Do not be fooled by how the first listing of this film on IMDb is a comedy. The Coffee Table is not a comedy. I had been sick for the last week, so delayed recording this video and thought I would watch just some more horror movies to see what else would make the list. And somehow, I watched this. Jesus and Maria are a married couple that have been struggling with their marriage, but they just became parents, and to fix up their home, they decide to buy a new coffee table that will change the course of their entire lives. This is the one film that I'm not really going to recommend that you watch, especially not new parents or anybody with small kids for that matter, because at the core, this movie is just taking a parent's worst nightmare and turning it into a film. I haven't stopped thinking about this movie since watching it because it is just disturbing by all accounts. And to further prove the point that I have not stopped thinking about this, I didn't realize how much of an effect that this film had on me until the other day, whenever one of my kids decided to accidentally drop a vacuum down the stairs. I almost broke down in tears and jumped up. I was across the room at the bottom of the stairs, hoping that it was not my kid that had fallen down the stairs. I can't tell you how bad of the feelings that I had within me when this happened. I was not okay for quite a bit of time, and I'm still not okay. If you watch this movie and you're a parent, just be prepared. So I would definitely recommend, if you're going to watch this, to watch either Troll 2 afterwards or Malignant, because for me, this is one of those fun films that you can turn on and actually have a good time. It's got some incredible shots and some fun mysteries for you to follow, and it's all from James Wan. And this is one of those that I don't want to tell you any more about the movie. I don't want you to watch the trailer. I don't want you to look anything up. Just go and watch it and enjoy the experience. And another one that I don't want you to look up anything about is Frailty from 2001. I wasn't even going to put it on this list because I planned to cover it in the Twist series, because this movie has got a twist.
I know who the goddamn killer is.
And it's also got Matthew McConaughey and Bill Paxton. Just go watch it and have a great time.
Nobody knows it except us and others like us.
Clearly, I think that a blind watch is always best whenever it comes to anything that has either a twist or a lot of psychological stuff going on. And that's why you need to do the same thing and not look up anything, but go watch Last Shift. Don't watch Malum, go and watch Last Shift, and then afterwards, if you liked it, you can see the remake that they did a couple years later. The film follows a rookie cop who was on her first shift at the very last shift of the old police station.
To work the very last shift in this mausoleum.
And you'll find out exactly why they're shutting down this old location and moving over to the new station. Because even though there's nobody else there at the building, it's clear that there's something else in there. And this is a movie I kept skipping over the years because of this poster. Like, I don't know, I just can't stand this poster. And neither can I stand this poster. Terrified was another film that I skipped so many times because the poster just looked cheap. But now after watching it, I get it. I know why the poster is what it is. I just think that there would have been much better options. But after realizing that this is from the same guy that made When Evil Lurks, Damien Rugna, I had to go and watch this movie. And I'm so glad that I did, because this takes the whole idea of a haunted house and turns it into a haunted neighborhood, and then throws this new twist that I had never seen on it before. As well as some more of the most terrifying shots that I've ever seen in a movie. Taking place in a neighborhood in Buenos Aires where a bunch of weird stuff has been going on, a doctor that specializes in the paranormal, her colleague, and an ex-cop decide to get together to investigate exactly what is going on here. I don't want to spoil anything for you if you haven't seen it, but I've got to talk about this idea so you can skip ahead to this time code if you don't want to hear any more about it. Because it introduces this whole new idea to me that any of these ghosts or paranormal beings can't be seen from just anywhere. You have to be standing in just the right spot to see through to the dimension that they're in. It's such a cool and terrifying idea that all I can do is just recommend this movie to you and tell you once again, be prepared because it's a lot like When Evil Lurks. Nobody's safe. And I can also tell you that the reason that I watched Terrified is because of Oddity. Basically what happened is I had watched When Evil Lurks and then Oddity came out, so I decided to watch it. I asked the question if the guy that made Oddity had made anything else. Turned out he had made Caveat, so I went and watched Caveat and then asked the same question about When Evil Lurks and went back and watched Terrified. So in my mind, all four of these movies are oddly connected, which is perfect because Oddity has an odd connection to Caveat, which is why you need to watch both Oddity and Caveat to see how this universe is being built around oddities. My first thought after watching Oddity was that I need to get me a full-sized carved wooden man to sit right over there in that chair. I think it would fit right along with some of the other oddities that I have just right behind me. It follows a psychic medium who's trying to figure out what really happened to her sister that was murdered in their weird old square house. And she doesn't do it alone because she uses her oddities from her oddity shop to be able to see the truth behind this crime, which is convenient because she is blind. So is Tig Murphy in his right eye that you can clearly tell here is a glass eye that stands out and is very important to the movie. But the moment he shows up at the beginning, I was hooked.
I am telling you that there is someone in there with you.
It's creepy enough to have somebody show up at your new house in the middle of the night. It's even worse when they tell you they saw somebody go in and you didn't notice. Something else that had me right from the beginning was Over the Garden Wall. It's an animated miniseries following two brothers, Wirt and Greg, that are lost in a fairy tale world that are trying their hardest to find their way back home.
You have beautiful eyes.
It's so goofy and terrifying at the same time because of how innocent these children are.
So we came here to burgle your turts.
No, it's not true.
That while you go with them on their journey through this world, the entire time you're trying to figure out what's really going on here. All the way up to the ending where I'm still not exactly sure what happened.
Yes, all hope will soon be lost.
This show is great. It's about the length of a movie. I've watched it a couple times now, and I just love the fact that it's got Elijah Wood, Christopher Lloyd, Tim Curry, and a bunch of other amazing actors voicing these characters.
It just goes to show you stuff.
But if a show made for kids isn't what you're looking for, what about The House That Jack Built?
Don't believe you're going to tell me something I haven't heard before.
This is from Lars von Trier about a man named Jack who is a sociopath who recounts 5 different instances of just some of the murders that he committed and how proud he was of all of them. I don't think I can make a bigger jump from Over the Garden Wall all the way to here. Well, I guess other than the connection that there's more kids that aren't safe here. So go in prepared for anything possible to happen and for Jack to still be proud of what he did.
You might as well be a serial killer.
This is another pretty rough watch, so go in at your own caution. But the ending here, it just brings everything around for me. And the same exact thing happened with another miniseries that I hadn't watched until this year, Midnight Mass. Of course, this is from the amazing Mike Flanagan, who also did other shows that I've been told to watch, and for some reason, haven't done it. I don't know why, but for how amazing this was, I know I'm going to enjoy everything else that he does. And he's also got The Life of Chuck coming out in 2025, and I'm too excited for it. But the show revolves around a community on an isolated island where everything is pretty boring. That is until a new young priest shows up, where miracles and a lot more mysteries begin to happen.
Body of Christ.
Amen.
It's got psychological horror and vampires and reminded me a lot of Salem's Lot and one of my favorite characters from the Dark Tower series. And And if you haven't seen it and you don't want to see any spoilers, skip ahead to this time code, because I have to talk about one of my favorite scenes that I've ever seen. And all it is just when Riley takes Aaron out on the boat to the middle of the water after going through his conversion.
I knew you wouldn't believe any of this unless you saw.
And is basically telling her goodbye. And we see it from his perspective, and then it cuts to hers. It's so good and something you need to go watch, as well as Stir of Echoes. When I watched this, I was so surprised at how well everything was written and just how perfectly it wraps back around as a full story. And then come to find out, the original story was written by Richard Matheson, an amazing writer who, of course, also wrote a bunch of really good Twilight Zone episodes. I knew from that moment that this was going to be a high recommend for me. The film stars Kevin Bacon as Tom, who is just your average, everyday blue-collar worker making his way through life. That is until one night when he's at a party and his sister-in-law talks him into doing some hypnosis.
What's the worst that can happen?
Where it turns out that he is a part of the 8% of people that are really open to hypnosis. And that's what she tells him during the session, is to be more open to things, causing his mind to open up to all kinds of crazy things.
You talk to Samantha?
Yeah.
There's a whole big mystery involved, and you don't need to know any more than that other than go and watch this movie. It's such an amazing film, and you need to go and watch it, and you also need to go and watch Caddo Lake. This is my favorite film that came out in 2024, even though there are a ton of amazing films. This one somehow flew under the radar, and the only reason I knew about it is because of the thrifty typewriter. And just like him, all I'm gonna say is don't watch anything on this movie, don't watch the trailer, don't look up anything, go in as blind as possible and experience this movie. It's so good, and it is the perfect amount of weird and mysterious for what exactly is going on while you're watching it, and it's perfectly revealed all the way to the very last scene. It's one of these movies that I watched and I'm like, don't say anymore, just credits, just go to credits, and they did. They pulled it off with a perfect ending, just like my favorite horror film that I have ever watched, that I watched this year, The Wicker Man from 1973. This is one of those films that I skipped for so long because the only thing I knew was The Wicker Man from 2006 with Nicolas Cage. This.
Not the beast!
It's not the same, it's not even close. This one follows a Puritan police officer who goes to this Scottish remote island to see about a missing girl that he received a letter about. But all of the pagan locals there claim she never existed.
Oh, can you see any more?
You get to watch Sergeant Howie try to figure out this mystery, as well as navigate his way around this very foreign to him pagan culture that is all led by Christopher Lee, who is Lord Summer Isle and is basically the ruler of the island. And like I said earlier, the ending is perfect and so horrifying. The way that it's able to capture the feeling of complete helplessness is unlike anything else I've seen.
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!
I could talk about this movie for a very long time, and I just might do it if you would like to see it in a different video all on its own, explaining why this is one of the best horror movies ever made. But there are a few movies that I intentionally left off this list because I've either already talked about them in other videos or I have a plan to talk about them in future videos. Stuff like In the Mouth of Madness and, of course, Longlegs.
What happens if
But I would love to know what other movies that I should watch this year that I hopefully haven't seen, so I can get another wonderful year of amazing horror films. Because as far as 2024 goes, it was an incredible year for me, all because of you watching these videos and getting the sub count up way past what I thought was possible. And so thank you, because that's all because of y'all that I was able to reach this point. Even to go as far as to have merch now. Like this is insane. I mean, there's also the poster hanging up. I made that, as well as a ton of other things for anybody that has been kind enough to support me in this last year. This is just another way that you can support me and actually get something really cool out of it. And of course, I'm always open to film suggestions, but I'm also open to any suggestions that you have or something that you might want to see in the merch shop. Please let me know, because all of this is for y'all. But with all of that, I have to say that I'm so glad that you made it through this year. I know it's been tough for a lot of people, but you're here. You're here watching this now. You made it through 2024, and that is the coolest thing to me. All of these movies can be put aside because you're still here. And I know it might sound weird, but I'm just so thankful that you didn't give up. Because now we have a new year to go out and do some amazing things, to watch some amazing movies, and to make some amazing memories. And so with all of that, I'm so excited and I'm so thankful. And I hope that you have an extra blessed year, and that I'll see you in the next one.